Well, the dairy cow will tell you that you can't beat quality forage. That's number one. Your nutritionist can't make up for poor quality forage. And if you've got the calcium right and you've got growers on there, there's pretty darn good chance you're going to have an excellent feed.
Yeah, my name is Jim Halbeisen, and this is my opinion.
This week, I'm joined by my cohort out of the office, Chris Kohls, and he's up in Minnesota and working with some guys up there, so I'm going to let him introduce them, and then we'll get started, and we want to talk some growers' information. Now, Chris, if you've got anything specific you want to talk about with these guys, you can get the ball going, let them introduce themselves and say exactly where they are geographically, and so that our listeners can understand where we're doing business at. So, Chris, I'm going to let you lead the charge here.
Well, good morning. Thanks, Jim. We're up here in Swanville, Minnesota. I'm with Loren Scherping, the district manager, and customer Jeff Miller has been a longtime grower's customer. So we're visiting his farm today. He's a dairy operation. And I'll let you introduce, Loren, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, I'm Loren Scherping, district manager from Freeport, Minnesota. And been working with Jeff for probably 35 years, something like that. 35 years. He's been a long-time grower's user, and I've been feeding it to the cows and stuff and putting it on crops and stuff, and been doing really well. So we're up here visiting with him today. So,
So Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about your farm operation and what you've been doing the last few years?
Yeah, so I'm dairy farming on the home farm, 125 some years, been in the family, so several generations. I got a love for farming, dairying, working with crops. Just it's fascinating how it all works, and started out many years ago when using liquid fertilizer when nobody else was, and I tried a couple different brands, and then I got on board with Loren with the growers, and we started using it as a starter fertilizer, pop-up fertilizer on our crops, and feeding it to the dairy cattle. Still feeding some today to the dairy cattle. I think it's maybe not quite as important to the dairy cattle today as it was on our operation, as it was when I started, because I think our soil is definitely in a better condition, and the crops are probably nutritionally better because of growers and their program. Big fan of high calcium lime. We've used multiple sources, trying to keep our numbers in calcium up high, and don't worry about the rest of it so much. It kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah. Hey, can I jump in here, Jeff?
Yep.
Yeah. This is a typical grower's guy, a long-term grower's guy, and there's several things that I want to talk about when we were using the drone on your alfalfa eventually. But
I was heading that way.
We'll get there, so just bear with me for a little bit. You hit a very, very big point. When you started feeding the product to the cows, were you concerned about the nutritionist saying you can't feed fertilizer to a cow, or how'd you overcome that impediment?
Well, I attended a few meetings, and guys were doing it, and they were having good results, and I was at a point where I was getting mineral delivered bulk, and I was having trouble getting cow's bred back. And talked to my nutritionist, and I forget. I mean, they were breaking the bank here to begin with, and he wanted me to feed another 8 ounces of mineral.
Yeah.
And I said that's why I went to a growers meeting, and I forget the gentleman that spoke from Canada, but there were a lot of guys up there using it, having really good results. And I thought, what the heck?
Yeah.
And I just flat out quit on the mineral end with that company and started out adding calcium and growers to the ration. And yeah. And I've had
another big question we usually get from guys is the vitamin side of it. Did you maintain the vitamin pack, or did you drop that also when you went to the growers?
I maintained that.
Yeah.
I was buying commercial protein and having that's added in.
Sure.
So yep. I stayed on the vitamin trace pack, but when I added the growers, and over the years I've had employees here that I've gave them the job of doing the feeding, and some of them were here for quite some time, and I found that at points there were a couple of them that quit putting the growers in. They weren't taking the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was suspicious something was going on because the preg checks weren't very good.
Yeah. No,
and as soon as I got the cows back on track and made sure I had the right amount of growers in there, boom, you're getting like 65% preg check.
Right. See, the real problem with that is the old cows can't read the nutritional books, so that's always created a problem with the nutritionists. So.
Yep.
Now, I would like you to discuss the calcium side of the equation. Our guys just don't pay any attention to pH of the soil. What kind of protocol do you follow in rotation as far as how much calcium to apply and how often, and what are your parameters that you're looking at when you make those decisions?
Yeah, well, I guess I've been adding calcium for quite, 35, 40 years probably when I first started. We used a powdered lime out of Duluth for a while, and then down the road, eventually we switched over to beet lime. Mm-hmm. Both I thought were excellent products. So we've got a history of lime and pretty good. I'm kind of at I use soil tests to see, how much calcium is actually out there. I guess my thought is when the calcium levels are right, the rest of it takes care of itself. I don't worry about the calcium. Magnesium is one thing, everybody around here is using ag lime.
Right.
And now they're starting to switch to the high calcium products. My thought is if your ground ever had a spreader go across with ag lime, you're probably too high already. You don't need it anymore.
Yeah, that's right. So on any of your farm, any portion of your farm, would you take a wild stab at how many tons of high cal you've applied per acre?
Yeah, it depends on the soil type. I hit the low ground, the gumbo pretty heavy. It's amazing how fast calcium works a small amount on sand.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
The heavier soils, it takes quite a few ton to get that to work right. But yeah, and I try and get some on each time I rotate into alfalfa ahead of time.
So are you feeding most of what you raise, or are you selling some off of the farm? What's your protocol there?
We sell some off the farm. It's getting to be more. I'm kind of phasing out of the dairy end, probably be beef in the future and just cash crops. So that's where we're at there.
So what's your protocol with the growers mineral solutions as far as like, let's look at corn, for example. Do you use some in the row and foliar feed some? And then, what kind of levels do you try to use there?
Well, The corns pretty much pop up in row. Right, I use a Keaton seed firmer and place the growers directly on the seed in the row. So there's a lot of liquid fertilizers you can't do that with. And I've been getting by with it. One example I was just starting to share with these guys is I bought a planter 15 years ago and got it set up, and I went out and started planting the first field, and man, that tank was going empty fast. And I figured out I was putting on over 10 gallons to the acre on the seed.
That's a good customer.
That was, yeah. No, I didn't leave it there as much as I'd like to, but that was an excellent corn crop. It didn't hurt it a bit.
Right. Yeah. No, quite a learning experience.
Yep. I like to do more foliar feeding. I've experimented with that. We did fly on 50 acres on a hay field with a drone. We had a field day here.
Right.
Went very well. The feed tests were, I don't even know the numbers offhand right now, but the feed tests of the next hay crop was pretty darn good.
So Chris and I were there, when that happened.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Give me your impression of the drone. We're getting a lot of feedback from guys, and guys are looking at this drone technology pretty significantly. Even these, we've got new companies that are being formed where these guys are coming in, they're putting on cover crops with drones and then, spraying fungicide and that type of thing. In our case, the foliar feeding. What's your impression of the drone? And do you think that thing is here to stay, or where do you think it's going to fit in the future?
I think it's huge. There's no traffic, wheel tracks. You're not running any crops down. I think, yeah. I mean, most people are old school. They're hard to change, but when they see what this can do, I think it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, you buy me a drone, I'd gladly take it.
Yeah, that's kind of always an impediment there.
He'll be right on board.
Yeah, right.
That's
No,
right.
I'm seriously thinking about, I would love to have one. And I would foliar feed after every hay crop. I'd foliar feed the grain crops multiple times. I would foliar feed the beans and corn several times later in the season. And continue to use the starter beforehand on both. I use starter in furrow on the beans as well at a lower rate.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to work well too.
So on these podcasts, we've had dairymen, and they have talked extensively about forage quality. That's one thing I would like you to comment on for me, what your opinion is of how important forage quality is when you're in the dairy business.
Well, the dairy cow will tell you that you can't beat quality forage. That's number one. Your nutritionist can't make up for poor quality forage. And if you've got the calcium right and you've got growers on there, there's pretty darn good chance you're going to have an excellent feed to feed the cows. And there's no substituting or making up for poor feed.
Yeah. No,
So nutrient dense, I think we all know where the world's going with the food supply and how poor some of the nutrition is in some of the feed that's been raised with, just your NP and K. That doesn't cut it anymore.
Yep. Nope. And that's filtering up to the human level. And see,
Absolutely. Yep.
we've talked about this for years and years, and everybody thought we were kind of out on the fringe. But right now, there's just a recent headline on mainstream media about lead in rice, and they're trying to blame it on climate change. And I'm not arguing that doesn't influence it, but fertilization, that's one of the problems with phosphate, is lead in the phosphate ending up in the food chain. So, Loren, I'd like you to comment a little bit about, Jeffrey's kind of typical of your clientele base. Why don't you talk a little bit about the guys you work with up there in Minnesota and what their approaches are, and you've got some vegetable guys too you're working with.
Right, yeah. Jeff is one of the many guys, dairymen, that are using it and stuff. And another thing is your breeding and stuff. Far out cows, you can get them bred by feeding 4 ounces a day. Some of them are doing. The Jurger brothers up there by Barnesville, they're at the 4 ounces a day. They got high production up there and big cows. So they found that 2 ounces a day wasn't doing it. They had to go to 4 ounces a day. And so that's where they're at now. But the quality of the feed, they'll all tell you they'll eat less and produce more, and a lot better breeding and stuff. So, but yeah, they really like the product and everything, especially if you're dairy. Grain farm, it's a little bit different. You don't get paid for quality; you get paid for bushels. So
Right.
basically, it's a tough sell for a grain farmer, especially with the prices we got today.
Yeah.
Really a tough one to sell.
So, Loren, what's your environmental situation up there in Minnesota? You guys bone dry? Are you on the wet side on top now? Is all the frost out of the ground? Where are guys at? I've had several calls from Minnesota, and guys, a couple of them told me they got a couple weeks yet, they think. Some guys are saying, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of time. What are you seeing?
Well, the top 6 inches has got moisture, and then under that it's bone dry. You can take a shovel right out there in the field. Frost is probably out. We had deep frost this year, probably 4 or 5 feet. But frost, the top 6 inches is got moisture, and below that it's bone dry. It's been a dry winter is basically what it was. You know, we got that 10 inches of snow, and that helped replenish the soil a little bit. But other than that, we're going to need timely rains, and all we get is little showers that come through. So we're going to need a lot of rain yet this summer to keep that crop going.
So how big an area would you say that encompasses? I mean, you're about the center of the state. You get over towards the Twin Cities, down to Rochester and that. Are they in the same situation that you guys are at?
No, if you go east of here, I'd say that from the Twin Cities east to Eau Claire and that area, they've been getting rain like crazy. I mean,
I see.
They got plenty of moisture. So much moisture they haven't even thought about going in the field yet. Mm-hmm. But you go from the Twin Cities northwest, it's dry. I mean, right in central Minnesota, it's really dry, and even up towards Wadena, up in that area, northwest Minnesota, it's dry. You know, it basically all we're getting is showers. You know, little showers basically is all we're getting.
So what about like Randy Wurtzma down in around Sioux Falls and that? Are those guys dry like you guys?
I would say that west and northwest, those guys, they're all done planting down there already. Mm-hmm. I talked to a farmer the other day, and they said that they got the corn and beans all in because it's so dry. They're hoping that they're going to get rain now after this dry spell that they've been having after they got the corn and stuff. But it's really dry down there too. I think just south of Wurtzma's, by south of Worthington, to the southeast there, I think that's where the rain went through, and then up towards Twin Cities.
I see.
You know, Rochester and
mm-hmm.
and those towns. You know, not Hutchinson. Rochester and Austin and all those towns down in the southeast corner of Minnesota. They've been getting the rains, and it's been going up through Wisconsin, up towards Eau Claire, by Bob Hubbard and up in that area. So what do you see on the livestock side? You know, Jeff was talking about, you know, he's slowing down with the dairy cows, and you know, you've been commenting on that. This cattle market has just caught fire, and we have different areas in the country where guys are, you know, they're not getting big in cattle, but they're looking at it very seriously. What do you see up there? Are the cattlemen, you know, they trying to hold a few back, or they pretty well just keeping themselves liquidated down to bare bones? Well, I don't know. My boys sold, I think it was 27 head here about a week ago. They averaged 800 pounds, brought $2,300 a piece.
Wow.
So The cattle prices are ridiculous.
Right.
I don't know how long that's going to last. Ducks can only fly straight up that long, and then they come down.
Yeah. Well said.
And they come down hard.
They asked me what they should do, and I says, "Gee," I told them that ducks only fly straight up that long, and sooner or later,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's how long can the people keep affording this?
Right.
That's the thing. I'm expecting it to come down. I'd say in the next month or two. I might be wrong. What the hell does a growers guy know?
So Jeff, talk a little bit about that. Your interaction with other dairymen. Boy, I've got guys telling me that they're doing this beef on dairy thing like crazy because they can't turn down, $1,000 for a day-old calf. What are you seeing when you talk to guys?
Well, there's a lot of them doing it. They like it. The cows are healthy as all get out, and they're bringing big money. Mm-hmm. But it's also created a shortage.
In the heifer market.
Dairy cows and spring and heifers are bringing $4,000 to $5,000.
Wow.
That's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And how can you afford to keep any cow that's in the tail end of your herd? I mean, it's pretty easy to take her to market.
Yeah, for that price.
But then again, if you're not raising your own replacements, like I never went down the colored breed. I mean, I understand some of them even they'll do it as a second or third breeding because of conception rate is a little better. But yeah, no, I don't know. Right or wrong, a lot of guys didn't like it, but I've used the sex semen. I always like the more replacements, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can always find a tail ender and replace her with a better animal.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, this market is just wild, and I hope Loren's wrong. I hope it's a year or two and not a month.
Yes, in my opinion, Jim.
Yeah.
I've heard that enough.
Very good, gentlemen. I appreciate that comment.
Yep.
So that is one thing, Jeff. Would you comment on that? I think it's, the fresh meat market has just been really benefiting from this because people you can see the mom and pop food operations they're disintegrating. They're leaving. They're struggling to find labor. People can't afford it, for the family. So they're basically buying hamburger, bringing it home and, making goulash and that type of thing. So that, to me, I think if that fresh meat market stays relatively aggressive, I think these prices can hold for a while.
Yeah, well, beef you can't replace them in a short period of time like you can poultry or hogs.
Right. Yeah.
So it's going to take years to build numbers. And from what I'm hearing is these feedlots, I don't know how they can afford it, but they're starting to fill them up because they're hungry for this crazy market.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, we've been hearing that we've been following this one young woman on DTN, and she's basically been saying that the feedlots have just been, piling them in there because they think when Memorial Day shows up, man, it's going to get pretty interesting, and they just don't want to ante up at that point. So, time will tell.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay, gentlemen. Chris, if you got one last comment, this is your last chance to contribute to this. But I appreciate Jeffrey and Loren, man. You guys, I really appreciate your input.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I always love coming up this part of the world. It's, these guys are good people, the growers, customers we have, and potential customer. We saw a great potential customer today that's doing the calcium. Still hasn't been totally sold on the growers, so we set up a test plot for him. So it's always good to visit with Loren. Loren brings a lot of history. He's always fun to travel with. He's got a great sense of humor. And it's neat to pick a guy's brain that's been around for 40 some odd years in the growers program. And then to meet quality customers like Jeff. I mean, he's top shelf customer, and look forward to maybe doing something else with Jeff in the near future. So with that, that's about all I got today.
Thank you, gentlemen. Excellent job. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Yep, thank you. If you want to sell customers on growers program, have them try sweet corn. It's Foliar fed with growers every week. Or strawberries, right, Loren?
Right, yeah.
I understand completely, man.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
This podcast has been brought to you by Growers Mineral. Please visit growersmineral.com.